Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room that we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. We have just escaped from Mathijs Janssen's room. It was wonderful.
Yeah, the multi-room team building experience. It was very different, as you promised. We had a lot of secret information. We were separated for basically the entire thing. I had a really good time with that. I have wondered, obviously for ages, about the idea of separating people in an audio escape room. And it's not easy to come up with. I've been trying to do that since season 2.
If we had known how separated we were going to be, we could have set this. We should have used a third computer.
Oh god, that would have been.
So we could have muted each other on the Skype call.
That would have been very hard, but very interesting. Oh, I wonder how that would have gone.
Just take your headphones off. I think that would have been the goal.
This is an interesting point that came out during playtesting a lot as well. It's I want you to able to hear each other, except not for the part where you're doing the solving, because the other person might want to use the same solution. And I think that's a good way to do that. And that's sort of the interesting part / constraint of this. I want you to be able to hear each other solving the problem without not necessarily giving the code away. Because it's not particularly great audio if Bill goes, okay, so I do this thing, and then I give you the code. And then he goes, oh, I do this thing, and then I give you the code. And you're basically two people saying the same thing. So that's why I want you to
while we were doing it, we were trying to find creative ways to avoid that a little bit. I mean, and it was sometimes hard to avoid, taking his time to be I'm going to draw a picture of what my blocks look like in the metal shutter. And I'm going to show you it after it opens, or I'm going to, right at the end there, me not saying anything about the blocks I was putting down, but just showing them to Mathijs. So, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's a tricky one.
But it is tough. It's weirdly, design-wise, it is weirdly would be better, I think. It's one of the few audio escape rooms that, would be brilliant as a real room. I was thinking
the entire time, I would love a room like this, and I've only heard of one room that is majority separated. I can't even remember where it is, somewhere that we were near in America or Canada, and we didn't do this one. But yeah, I've heard that it is largely separated, and I was always terrified of that. But this has now made me super keen to actually try out some real separated rooms.
Because it was just fun. It was just little puzzle solving, sort of, more so than
lateral thinking.
Yeah, it was like little lateral thinking.
It felt like
puzzles.
exactly like a team building thing would be. I felt like I was in a school camp.
The puzzles that they're meant to be super simple. I'm just giving you the code. There you go. Here's the code. There's no looking for keys or anything. It's just here's the code. Find a way to communicate it somehow.
And I love that. I love anything that requires a team in escape rooms and requires multiple people to have different duties. It makes everyone feel important. And so I'm super into that. I thought it makes you feel nice and accomplished and trying to figure stuff out.
Is there a reason you decided to design it this way? What was your first thought of here's what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this type of a room.
So I've been listening to you guys for a while, and I definitely want to design a room specifically for something that would work on audio podcast. It's what's something that we can do on audio podcast that we cannot? That's something you got a bunch of rooms that you go to a room, you discover, you search around. What's something that I can really make use of the audio format for? It's I've done some secret information in my games before. This could be a fun way to implement that. And
forcing us to communicate with each other. That's cool. It reminded me, because that's another one that I always like, and you do have a big RPG background. It particularly reminded me of the community episodes where they're playing D&D, because in both episodes with that, those are full-on separations. In the first one, Pierce, that's his name, not the actor's name, goes rogue, so he has to get separated from the party. So the DM is just making things totally differently happen. But then the second one, even more so. Do you remember how that goes in the second episode?
No.
In the second one, the half of the party gets separated from the other half until one of them starts sending messages to the other. Right. And it's just, how lucky is it? Will one of these messages reach the other team?
And
so I felt very much, I was thinking of that for a lot of the time. Just the two separate teams trying desperately to communicate with each other.
Well, what I would love to do is I would love to go room by room and break
Oh,
down
yeah.
from the beginning how we did it, how it was different in like a playtest version. If you had any other ideas for how it would be communicated and things like that, I'd love to break down.
For sure.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I do have a question about that. If I ever DMing an RPG and players, I've got a problem for players to overcome, I often don't come up with a set solution for them. I just come up with the problem and they can do what they want to solve it, whatever they've got at their disposal. So I want to, did you have solutions more specifically in mind, like a right one with other ones possible, but a right one?
So-
or did you just design the problems?
Because this is an escape room, I felt like there should be a sort of a right solution.
Cool.
For example, the one with the 4x3 rods in the wall. I think there is definitely a correct solution there, but I also have the leeway as a GM, as a game master in this scenario, that I can say, if you find out a pattern that's not exactly what I had in mind, but it makes sense, I can just say yes. Like if you're really struggling or whatever, and eventually like you've been spending like half an hour on this and you can't like, oh, maybe it's the 4 blue ones, I'm just going to say yes at some point, which is not super satisfying, but that's something as a GM I can always say, well, this works now, that's something, that's nice, I have freedom.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so which one was room 1? Room 1 was the one with the plate-weighted shutter and the blocks, right?
Let me
No,
give you a little bit
that's
of thing
room
before
2.
we get to 1.
Oh, no.
Because this is such a unique concept, I really wanted to make sure that there's that the theme was not super complicated, and that all the puzzles were fairly easy and fairly self-contained. Because communication was such a big thing in this one, I really wanted to make sure, okay, that there's a clear-cut solution to this one, and it's sort of its own little thing, and then you know that you're only working on this solution, and then when you're done with this puzzle, you move on to the next thing, which is also clearly puzzle. And it's also like I really want to define those boundaries really, really clearly to make sure there was not like you're dumped into a room with 7 million puzzles and Bill is seeing an 8 and rubber duck and you go figure it out, because I don't think that would translate very well. That would be very hard to solve.
And I think based on where our brains are tonight, this is probably the exact sort of room that we needed. I think we might have broken down if we'd had that style of room right now. No, you're right. I forgot
First
a room.
room was just glass.
Just the straight up
It
glass.
was just we couldn't hear each other, we could see each other, and we had a code to express.
Yep.
You immediately came up with a very reasonable solution to blow on the glass and draw it out, and
But
then you
then having
abandoned
one
that
solution is boring,
so
so
that
you got to
could
come
be
up with a second.
overly complicated and do a little dance.
Exactly.
So the thing about this first room, and this is what they call it the calibration room. This is sort of, it's also a teaching moment. It needs to be clear to the players that you can't hear each other, but you can sometimes see each other. And if you accidentally work out the code, then this is sort of like a teaching mechanics of the core game, almost like a tutorial level.
Yes, and it felt that way. And it felt like to me there were a few solutions, right? You did it by moving your body into those shapes. I did it by writing it on the glass, and you could do it by
We
with
could theoretically
fingers,
just use your fingers.
Right? You could just mark
What
it out with your
what did
fingers.
playtesters opt for?
Playtesters, like writing, breathing on the air and trying to write on it is definitely been the most popular one. Numbers, just like going 1, 8, 1, 8, 1, 8. It's also popular. The reason why that doesn't always work is because that's where sometimes people mess up. Because the codes are not equal size, sometimes people are like, why are you saying 1, 8, 1, 8 and then 1 again? Are you repeating it? No, like it's that, and that's a way to sort of try to catch people out who are trying to just do number, just sign one by one.
Yeah, and it is Danny, and it is a. And it is good because it's just enough of a puzzle to be like, okay, I get it. Like, I got to think these things through a bit more.
I do like that it leaves the options open for multiple things, so you just have to be a little cautious.
I feel like they were always the same length, but we were always worried they wouldn't be.
It's good to be cautious about it so that you know you can't cheat things.
Yeah.
Just in case.
I liked it. It was great. Is there anything that you, when you wrote it, did you have in your head like, this is the way I expect them to do this?
So I
were you thinking about writing on the glass?
I visualize myself just doing the thing with the fingers, just going 1, 2, 3, 4. That's something. That's what I would see myself do. And if I were like, okay, so maybe it's opaque glass, or maybe I have a wrong idea, I would probably just maybe I see people knocking, but knocking doesn't work, and I see people try to mime it very clearly. But I think the one that I came up with as the other sort of reasonable solution was just write things on the writing on the wall through condensation. But
knocking didn't occur to me.
Interpretive Downs was only used once in playtests.
Well, I'm glad I think like someone.
Now, I will say, smart here, because both of our codes were above 1023, which is the
So we
highest
couldn't
number that you
binary.
can do in binary on two hands. So we couldn't just do it in
Oh, what
one.
a shame.
in
That would
one
have been
fell
impossible
binary
because
swoop.
facing each other, you can't do that. You need to.
True.
Yeah, you need to be looking in the same direction.
Also,
for that
keep
to
in
work.
mind that if you do binary, there's of course the mirror image. So if you go
Exactly.
2 and 1, the other person might go, oh, that's 1 with 1001.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the problem.
You know what I would have done? If I could do it in binary, I would have put my back to the
Yeah, I
glass
mean,
and
I
held them up
assume
in front of me
so.
like this.
And then would have taken far too long anyway. But
So that classic room, loved that room. Second
Okay.
room was the metal
okay, that
shutter
was
and
the plate,
blocks.
metal shutter, and some blocks, and you were missing a block that you
Yeah,
needed.
I needed to do 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
But I was missing the block for number 1. My solution was to try and do 12,
Yep.
3, 4, and I did the 12 by putting a 5 on top of a 7.
Yep.
You got that straight away, which was great. I was really happy with that. That took me a little bit to figure out, but that's, I think, to me, the best way to do it on my end.
Yeah, and I did not choose. I'm assuming I did not choose the best way, but
You just did 9.
I just wrote a 9. And you're right, like slamming my shutter up and down a few times to indicate that might have been a little clearer, which is sort of what I did with the seesaw at the end.
Yes, a little bit.
But yep, just 9, make
9.
it work.
So
Yeah,
here's
and
the
I just started
interesting
putting
thing
in notes.
that changed in playtesting. Originally, the fact that Bill only got 8 cubes instead of 9 was also part of the secret information. So I wouldn't tell Danny Bill only doesn't have the number 1. Which meant
Yeah, which
Well,
is fair.
luckily, it didn't even matter because I didn't think about it until you said it again.
Good. But you're right, because that is something that is important. Because then you have to work out, why wouldn't I be using just a 1? This can't be what. But so that is reasonable to have that be secret information. I could have expressed that to you by doing it in 2 steps. Like the first thing, putting the blocks 2 to 9 without a 1, shutting the shutter to be like, look, these are the blocks that I have, and then rearrange them.
That's
If
true.
it was
But
too
if you
confusing.
think
It's
about
just-
that a little
it's just-
bit, Bill, it doesn't make sense for you to know that that's not necessarily a logical thing for you to communicate. And Danny knows he has the numbers 1 through 9, so it's a reasonable assumption for her that you would also have those numbers.
Oh,
Yes.
It's a good thing that I wasn't thinking hard enough about that.
Ah.
It made it
do you
work.
think-
So
do you
my
think
solution...
it wouldn't have mattered for you in this case that if I would just given the information as secret. In this case, I don't think.
No,
Yeah.
apparently not.
But I do. I think it is a nice thing to give secretly. Like if I was, especially if I'm not doing it for an aired podcast, I would have erred on being like, won't tell the other people what blocks they have.
Yeah.
But my solution was to do the addition. Did you have any other solutions in
what did other
mind or
people
from
do?
playtesters about how to express it without the 1?
The most common one is just build a tower. They just do 2, 3, and 4, and then just make a tower of the other numbers. But they put them like
so the numbers are irrelevant, but the number of blocks. Rather
That's
than
no,
what
on
I
blocks.
did think.
It's
I
a-
was doing.
it's a
That
tower
was my
of-
first
it's a tower of
thought,
numbers.
actually.
and they made sure they were
Yeah.
sideways, so they're not upright, but they're sort of turned, so to sort of suggest that the number doesn't matter.
Yeah, I did
love that.
think
I
of
like
that, and you
that.
can see I've got a little picture where I started drawing a little wall.
Yeah.
But then I immediately went, "Oh no, wait, they've got numbers on them. I
Yeah, you
remember
just
now."
do the 9. That is smart. That's a nice way to do it. So you have a single block, then 2 blocks, then 3 blocks, then 4 blocks. That's 4.
Makes sense. And
Although
is that...
you don't have enough blocks.
No, not quite, Chris.
Oh,
They
all in
do Bill. So they do the number 2, 3, and 4 just by the singular blocks, and they stack the other blocks on top into one big tower to form a number 1. It's a visual number 1.
Oh, to be the number 1. Oh, I
Nah.
would never have thought of that.
I tried to think of that, but obviously that didn't work with 9.
I wouldn't. I'm glad I wouldn't have interpreted that very well. I think that's interesting. I like that. That makes sense.
And for the 4 9s, that's basically that's gone 2 ways. There's people who just do number 1 8, 2 7, 3 5, 3 6, 4 5 as a way to do 4 9s.
Yeah.
But the other person does like number 9, then that's probably one of the most interesting solutions found. They put the number 9 the far left, and then they would close the shutters, and then they would move it ever to the left a couple of inches, and open the shutters
So
again.
it's like 9, then 9.
Yeah.
It's actually moving places. That's fun.
Yeah.
That also makes sense. It just feels like a lot of people worked harder than I did to make their answers clear. I just put a single 9 there and went, yeah, he'll get it.
You have
So I've played this with groups that have not that don't know each other very well, because you guys clearly know each other very well, apparently.
That may make a difference.
So you can do some shortcuts that the other people.
We do often play games that are like puzzle games where we've each got to guess a thing from the most obtuse possible
We deliberately
clues.
make them harder for each other
So,
as
yeah.
for fun.
Yeah.
We'll have like
just to see if we're on the same stupid wavelength.
yeah.
So yeah, my actions do not surprise me at all, nor does it surprise me that many people came up with significantly better solutions.
True. So the next room after that one was holes in the wall, I believe. The 4x3 grid
Yes.
was our room
Oh,
after
yep,
that.
that's right.
I didn't even draw them. I erased them every time, and I still remember them.
Ridiculous. See, that's the one I didn't remember because that's the only one that I did go over.
Fun. I really liked that one.
Yep, that was
I liked
nice.
that we thought it, like we went through, we're like, what are we doing? We tried out one idea that didn't really feel like it had huge promise because it couldn't work on my end. We tried it
Exactly.
out and then we went, wait a minute.
The second thing.
I've got
Let's
it.
try it. And then we screwed up communication for that one, probably because I stopped listening at one point.
About
Who
which
knows?
was left, which was right, which was shared. I think it's because we were looking, I think when we did the first one, like our issue with communication was on the first one, not noticing that one of those stars was the same. And I think it's just because I immediately went like, oh, that's not laid out the same as the other, so it won't be the same.
I think I'm
with the
thinking of a
assumption that it
later
wasn't.
moment than you when we said, oh, let's see if any of them are the same. You immediately said your first column.
Yeah.
And I looked at my first column and I just went, oh, that's not the same. What a shame.
But yes,
I'm pretty sure
I
I
was
just.
already dismissive that it wasn't going to be the same for some reason.
Ah,
and so I was like,
interesting.
so I don't think those are the same. And we had to go back and double
Yeah,
check.
that'll be interesting to hear exactly where the miscommunication was when you do the edit for this one. Because I'm assuming it was me and that I just swapped red and yellow in my brain
it
or
was
something.
Bill who made a mistake. You said something wrong, but I'm not entirely
Oh,
sure.
I'll take that.
I think it was me as well.
Oh, okay,
I
I'm
think it was
happy with
me
that.
Miscommunicating it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Now, how do you think, I assume this one, we were able to talk to each other, which, thank God. What on earth would we have done if we couldn't have?
If we couldn't talk,
Just figure out what clothes we were wearing and point to colors and ups and downs. That would have been wild. But
Yeah.
I can picture that still being a thing.
I think if you couldn't talk, you would need to have little, cut 3 little jars of paint that you could dip your rods into and then stick it through the hole. So it's like I stick in what I think is blue and it comes out blue, but for you it's in the middle of a yellow thing. So you're like, no, and you push it back.
Man, that would
and
be
I have to
wild.
then stab it until it finds the right blue.
Like in this room, obviously, being able to talk to each other, great, because it's a
I think it was
podcast.
necessary.
In the real world, that would be hilarious, and I would love to
another
see
way
someone
to
do
do it is
that.
just use the colors of the rods. Some rods, one rod is blue, one rod is yellow, one rod is red.
Oh my God, were they?
No, they weren't.
They weren't, but you
Oh,
could.
This
you
is
could
definitely
do
the
that.
puzzle that has undergone the most changes. This used to be like almost like a maze, and you had to basically work together to put a single big rod that went through both sides. Basically, had to move it through a maze, and if you would go to the wrong entrance, it would give you a beep, and you would need to reset. But this is a bit more, I think, clearer visually. So instead, okay, there's just
for
one.
sure. That was sort of what I was thinking initially when I said
Because
let's
of
make
those
a path.
2 things that look like you wanted to make a path between them, the 2 green.
But instead, it was
thingies on the
just
side.
have one in every column.
Yeah.
Is all that was representing.
And it was, I liked it.
So I can see
I
how it
honestly,
came from.
I really liked this one. It
Absolutely.
had a very keep talking and nobody explodes feeling
That's
of like
true.
the leftmost column, which is your rightmost column. So on your right, which is my left, which one's on the top? You know, like having to do the mirror imaging while discussing it.
Yeah, I
And
like
that's why I put down those little connecting bulbs as well. It's just to sort of visually identify that these are mirrored images. And some people are like, yeah, I've got a bulb to the right and there's another bulb to the left, and I got it. And I got a playtest who really got stuck. It's like, yeah, there's a bulb over the right, bulb on the left. I got the same thing, and they figured it out. They couldn't get it. It's like, well, where's the bulb exactly? Yeah, left. Where exactly left? Oh, bottom left. Oh, where's the bottom right? There you go. There's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
But no, I really liked that room. That was great. After that was
That was the bathtub room next, wasn't it?
yeah.
Bathroom stuff, yeah.
That was the one we spent the most time in.
Yes, it was the
That's
most.
definitely the longest room. That was definitely designed to be a bit more of a more
There were lots
complicated
of
challenge.
things. So, what was your sink? Your sink, I assume
It was an exact match of your sink,
Yeah.
but with the current water level sitting already at 5.
Gotcha.
So when I discovered that it would fill exactly the red and yellow buckets, I could indicate to you, hey, fill the red and yellow buckets and stick them into the sink.
That
I
made
think
sense.
we didn't even mention the contents. I had some leaders which amazed me. Right? But it's there's a big red bucket, a smaller blue bucket. It's like that will fill exactly. You didn't even care about didn't care about size or anything. He was like, no, I put it in the red bucket and I put it in the blue bucket, and
Doesn't
it's
matter
fine.
what size they are. I don't care how it could be 100 liters or 5
No, but
liters.
you
It doesn't matter. I've got a
you didn't even
message.
stop to think that it might be red or the yellow bucket or the blue and yellow bucket. You just got the right answer somehow.
I just figured I'd start you because I think it's because you said there's more water than there is like that would fill into a single bucket. So I immediately had in my head there is a lot of water. Why don't I start with the 2 biggest buckets?
That makes sense. Yeah, that's definitely a hint, perhaps a bit too much of a hint. But I think you like going like, oh, it's subtle if you get over to look for. I guess like, oh yeah, there's more water than fits in a single bucket, and then you go, oh, maybe you need to use 2 buckets. Could have just gone. There's a lot of water. You need to figure out exactly how much.
Yeah.
Now, this was a very interesting one from my perspective because I didn't have any way to communicate with you until my character discovered the mirror thing. And even then, it was barely there. Like, I was really hoping I'd be able to send ducks to you, but I wondered if, like, the first time you used the pneumatic tube, a setting would change or something. But, no, I couldn't send ducks to you.
So this is also an interesting room. Like, some people have been complaining. Like, I don't have, from Danny's perspective, well, I don't have anything to give back to Bill, like, and there's a couple of ways for me to hint. You're gonna find out eventually, as some people just sort of metagame this by going, well, I know he can see me, I'm just going to show you numbers and see what happens.
Yeah.
But what happened is that eventually, if you take another look at the sink, you sort of see it's a one-way mirror. If you don't get the feeling of being watched by someone.
Man, should have done because those 2-way mirrors are the sorts of ones where if you look at them really closely and in the dark, you can see it.
Yeah.
You could have that as if you tried to breathe on that one like you breathed on the glass in the first room, then you get right up close to it, maybe you can see something weird.
And the only problem I have with the idea of that, like I thought the same thing, like maybe I could like cover up, make it darker on this side so now it's lighter on your side so you'll be able to see through, or the other, whichever way it works.
Yeah.
But then I went, yeah, but if we managed to do that for some reason, then we would just break the whole room because then now we can see each other and I'd just be like 5, 3, 1. So it's like,
maybe
if we could get that solution, which I didn't think we could have, then it would have been, you could have used it to break the whole room.
I did want to figure out what those ducks meant.
Because if we ever get it so that you can just see me, I don't need to use any of these fancy tools. And that feels like a waste of a room.
So what were your ducks? Were they like partners to my ducks?
Yes.
They were. I had a white sheep, I had a farmer, I had a devil, I had a person in a Native American headdress. And when I say person, I mean duck. I had a cow and I had a royal duck.
Gotcha.
So they were just counterparts to yours.
Okay.
But the only one that had a marking was my devil duck.
Interesting.
And I couldn't send it over to you.
So again, this is interesting. There were a couple of different sort of iterations of this room. In one of the iterations, all the ducks had different numbers. So there's if you see the picture, there's 2 frees in the duck. There's one on the red devil, and there's another one on the smaller one. I at some point had at the wall you have unique numbers. So basically, the correct solution was to send all the other ones through, and then you should be able to figure out, okay, this is the one that's missing. This should be the number.
Yes, which was my first thought. I didn't expect the farmer to have the 3.
But I was like, this is more interesting. This gives you sort of multiple options. You can do it this way, or you can send just the farmer. Another thing that you didn't pick up on, that I think most of the people in the playtest did, you were missing a 1 block in your second room. Remember, you had numbers 2 through 8, 2 through 9?
Yeah.
And this is
there
where
was
the
one
number
block.
showed up.
Of course, that's my 1 block. I like that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it at all.
Someone stole it from the first
stole
room.
1 block.
And that's why you got sort of the warning beforehand. Well, you don't take stuff with you between rooms. And we had some incidents in the past.
I like that. Okay, that makes sense. I love it.
Oh, that is nice. All right.
How do you feel about sort of the one-way communication? Did you feel it was interesting? Like, definitely now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I loved that only being able to send from, because I felt like it was weird because like Danny was kind of helpless because she couldn't do anything, and I felt really helpless because like I don't know how to
and yet
express
you
these
knew
things.
that you had the responsibility to make the first move.
I thought it was really fun. I really quite enjoyed doing that and trying to come up with these little puzzles, how to get each individual element across. I think it was the room I had the most trouble picturing the mechanics of it. Like I wasn't sure what could send a message, so I think a lot of the time for that room was figuring out like okay, wait, let me just double check with the sync. What can I send? Like, how can I send sync information? Like, does it empty out into another place? Can I transition water? But once I had my head around all that, like, it was like, okay.
I will say this was the room where I started having all the dark thoughts, like, what if I cut myself and I write in blood the messages on a duck?
Don't do this.
I've had
But
some
luckily,
people,
I wasn't the one who had to send messages.
I'm
I've
glad.
had some people, instead of trying to get the little buckets through, they just try to scoop a bunch of water from the bath and just hold the bucket adjacent to the cube.
That's what I was afraid of.
I was like, I'm going to allow it, but I think it's not a super clean solution because the water might get stuck or...
Yeah, I didn't think you could send water through
that
a
would be a
pneumatic
mess.
tube. So I didn't even try. I'm not a fool.
There, it was very much this whole thing, and I mean, I know in this one you had the onus much more on you than I did, but at the very beginning when we were told how much we were going to be separated, that made me panic a little bit, just about having to take own initiative and not having a team, not having you there to be able to go, well, what do you think? If I do this, does that feel like it'll work?
Yeah.
Yet, I had a lot more fun doing that than I expected to.
Yes, it was a lot of
Make
fun.
it work like that. All right, so what came next? Was
I
the
believe it
next
was
one
the dark room.
The net room.
Oh, the
The
net room.
That
yeah,
is the dark room.
Yeah, the net room.
So yeah, this was another sort of break. Just wanted there to be like a break between all the you can't see each other and you can't hear each other. A sort of more like a role play. This is not a very complicated puzzle. You just need to get the thing.
No, it was just find a thing and then hand it across.
No, but I love having the shift from can't hear but can see and just swap it over. You gotta have it. Feels like it has a natural fit that you have to have one where you just can't see.
Yeah, it was nice, and it was almost like a nice bit of like it was a different type of puzzle solving because you're right. It wasn't there wasn't any like a puzzle to solve. It was just search around till you find the thing.
But it should have been simple because if you tried to make this one last longer, it just would have been
It would have
more
been draining.
searching.
And this was nice to have like a moment of like. It was definitely didn't feel like it was wasted, but it felt like a nice like. Use a different part of my brain for a second and then get back into trying to puzzle solve once we get to seesaws.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I liked it. It was well placed.
Especially after the last room, I wanted there to be something really nice and simple, sort of to flow into to create like a different variety of puzzle.
Yeah,
I did find it like it was a bit weird when you sent me that email for that room when we got in that said the net makes you speak with a French accent. Which I found kind of weird. I didn't really get it.
Sorry, was it French? It should have been German. My bad. Oh, I think I mixed up the room.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. The net makes you sound German. That's very fair.
Right. Thanks for clearing it up.
The seesaw room.
Now the seesaw room, I feel like that was the one, like, surely the way that I did it can't have been, if there is an intended way, surely that wasn't it. Surely we're supposed to use all three seesaws, right?
Danny, I've been trying all manner of things to get people to use all three seesaws and no one ever did. At some point you should just go, okay, you know what? They're gonna be there if you want to use them. You don't need to use them. Originally it was like gonna be if you use the same seesaw.
How could you use them? They don't balance. I don't understand. What would happen if I put a 2 on my end? Or a 6 on my end.
I would probably have to do a 3 or
a
a 4 or some other sort of balance thing. Figure that out.
At some point there was not a keypad. There was simply like a balancing thing. If you manage to balance them with the right numbers, then you get a green light. That's what I took it out.
That's wild.
They're sort of weighted. They're not balanced as a neutral. They're not balanced. If you put like a 4 on them on your side, then it's balanced.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to. So that's sort of the way. They're unfair skills, to put it that way. And the idea is you put on a 4.
But I suppose now that we were trying to communicate a specific number to the other, then it was like we don't just have to balance it. We have to balance it and then figure out what the ratio is and what that means the number should be. Am I putting on a 2 that you balance with a 4? Does that mean the answer is 4? Is the answer 2? And you have to work out that it's actually only half. And how do we figure that out? And
needing to balance them is, again, I think that's more fun if it's a real room, but needing to come up with the specific numbers works way better for a podcast.
Yes, and needing to come up with specific numbers makes those unbalanced ones much harder for me to interpret. Because I'm like, how do I get a definite number answer across to you, knowing that the ratio is also multiplied by a certain number, and the middle one was a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
I think if we had needed to balance them all, it would have felt like a completely
that would have
puzzle.
suddenly been a big difficulty spike.
So
would have been
one of the things that was in there is one of the things I had tried is each of the one on the far the closest to you and the one the furthest away have a block welded to them. so they're not. So it's like, okay, it's sort of stuck in the starting position, and you are sort of aware if yours is down that way, then these on that side also must have a block welded to them. But that was just going. All these things I tried didn't really work out, so I was happy to just go, okay, just put all in the middle. If you want to use the middle, if you just want to use the middle, that's fine. If you don't want to use the middle, if you want to get them, try to use all three.
That is fair. I can sort of see that happening. Like, if I had looked at one of the ones that was unbalanced in my end, and I knew somehow, if I was just assuming that you hadn't touched that one yet, then I could have worked out which of my blocks balanced it. And then you could have put an extra weight on that, and then I could have used my other blocks to figure out how much you must have added for that.
Perhaps, yeah. But even then, what I added would have still had the same ratio. Like, if I added a 1 and...
It's not so much the ratio, just to clarify. It's not so much the ratio, it's just it's weighted at -4, for example. If you put down a 4, it's now balanced, and it's not, then if you both put down the same number, it would still be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so that would make more sense.
I can
than
see
the unbalanced. Yes, if there was a welded block already.
Yep, I can see how that makes sense.
I think I would be more inclined to use it for this particular version of the puzzle.
That was roughly how I had been picturing it. I was picturing like maybe there was a sort of a weight inbuilt into one end of it in some way. So, yeah, that was my assumption of it. But then my assumption of it was, well, that's too hard.
Yeah, so you just stuck with the middle, like always. And we did it. Yeah, we did it. And it was kind of... Was that the final room?
Yes, that was very much.
And I like that because it felt like a throwback to like the second room, like at the start where we were doing the blocks. It kind of had a similar feeling of how to deliver that message. And I kind of like that as like a bookending of the whole experience.
I wasn't joking. I felt a level of comfort having those blocks back again because the blocks are definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, Daniel loves the blocks.
Block communication, I love.
So bringing the blocks back was fun.
They're not weighted in the second room, which might have caused an issue.
No.
I could have made them weighted, but then people would try to put them on the plate, on the pressure plate.
Oh, yeah.
I did wonder if that at the start if that's what we were going to have to do.
Yeah,
but
it wouldn't work if you stack all the cubes on the pressure plate. It's just not quite heavy enough.
Yeah. That said, we also never asked in the second room.
Maybe they weren't weighted. Who knows?
Yeah, one is radioactive. Oh.
I have one final question about this room. Not the Cecil room, but the whole escape room in general. You said at the start, and we saw as we played, it's a modular room. And you can add in and remove things as you go, depending on how the timing is going. Are there any other rooms that you have designed that we didn't play in this modular?
No.
Could you have added another room?
No, you were doing things quite fast, and you sort of didn't get stuck on anything. I found that some people just got stuck on the room, and then if they get stuck on the room for a really long time, they don't necessarily want to play the last section, for example. They don't. If they get stuck on the second room, they don't want to play the sixth room, for example.
That's fair. Being able to get a sense for how people are feeling about it.
Has the order been the same every time you run it, or do you occasionally go, oh, they didn't like this room so much, I'll take out the ducks room, or I'll take out the seesaw room? Do you specify, or is that group based, or do you just always take the last one off?
The first one always happens, the one with the glass, because that just needs to be in there to sort of teach the game mechanics.
Fair enough.
I take out the bathroom and I take out the lever room sometimes if the groups are struggling the most, but I don't necessarily change all that much. And that's just to sort of make sure that timing-wise, because the bathroom is the one that takes the longest and can be kind of complicated, frustrating, if communication doesn't quite work. That's the one to take out. In the living room, if I feel like, okay, you're not sort of I don't feel like you're not super creative in the solutions, maybe, or maybe they're getting kind of fed up, you can take it out.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I'm glad then that we didn't, because it's definitely happened once or twice before where we've been told at the end, oh, and there was actually this thing that you didn't end up doing. And that just makes us go, what?
Sad. It's like, why would you not let us do it? Put it back in.
I want more puzzles. I know I'm probably crying because I've done 8 of these things in a week, but I still don't want to miss puzzles.
But no, that was... I'm glad we got to do them all. I really liked it.
Which is your favorite?
Yeah, what's your favorite room?
Ooh, that's tricky, because I think the one... I really like the first room, just because as a way to introduce the mechanics. I think that's the one where people sort of also get the most creative. I also like the bathroom, because that's the one where people just try to figure out the weirdest. I'm like, well, this is technically work, and some people just don't. Sometimes the sort of the dashes don't scan with people, and that's when they get with really weird solutions, which is very interesting.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair. I loved it. I had a lot of fun with it. What was your
It
favorite room,
was.
Danny?
Well, like I said, anything involving the blocks, because I felt like that was a really cool. I think, yeah, maybe even the first block room. Although the seesaw one got
I
there.
think that was my favorite. The shuttle room is my favorite.
I think
really
it was
liked
just the exact right level of what are the most interesting ways I could communicate this message to you
it's
right
like the
now?
purest version of the communication problem.
It
I
was
really
the
liked
right
it.
level of limited and freedom.
Yeah.
There was still lots of choices, but you were clearly using the blocks to communicate.
I definitely like, I'm the sort of GM that enjoys, here's a problem, figure out how to solve it, rather than here's the key, find the lock, or here's the lock, find the exact key.
Yeah, fair.
And this is like,
it's nice.
and that's what I like about this sort of room. I can give people a lot of freedom because it's communication in two players. There's a lot more sort of opportunity to try out different things, and if you get your code interpretive dance, that's the correct solution. That's not what I had in mind, but that's the right solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. Yeah, that was great. That left me feeling very happy.
It was a really good room. I loved it. All right, well, thank you. That was so much fun. We really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on and running the room. If people wanted to find out more of what you're doing, or is there anything that you wanted to tell people about, this is your opportunity.
Oh my god, I'm famous now. So I don't necessarily want to plug my own stuff, but there's something I do want to plug, and I think that Dan can appreciate this as well. And maybe Bill as well. In order to get these rooms to be as awesome as they could possibly can, what's the most important thing for that, Danny?
Why am I being put on the spot?
What's the most important thing for this Bill for making sure rooms are awesome?
Playtesting?
Yes,
Probably not.
very good, Bill.
Not for us.
I was going to say checking a door.
Also that. I'm going to send you a link to Door Checkers Inc. now.
Exactly.
I've had a lot of lovely help from people doing playtesting. A lot of people help playtest room. There's the virtual playtesting Discord server. People who are interested in designing board games or playtesting board games go there to test their own stuff, and you can test other players' games. You can even have other people test your game if you're interested in that sort of stuff. There's a couple of escape rooms if people sometimes do that, but that's mostly board games. Especially during
that is lovely, because I've specifically heard that getting people to playtest your stuff and finding the right people for that is possibly the hardest part of design.
Yes.
So knowing that is a thing that is out there, excellent.
Especially during pandemic, there's a lot of problems to get together, and this has been an excellent way for people to playtest as well. And if it's supposed to be American time zones and European time zones. If you're Australian and this Discord room is not the right fit for you, there's a bunch more out there. But ask us and we'll find you a room that works for you. And I will send the link. I will share that link in the show notes, I guess. So you can check it out.
Yeah,
send it to
we'll
me.
put that in
It'll
the
be in the
description.
show notes for everybody else.
Yeah, that's a great idea for all of you game designers out there. It sounds like something you should definitely make use of.
Yeah, it's a good resource. That sounds great.
And even if you're just interested in sort of how the sausage is made, like I know that some of your patrons listen to your playtesting episodes. I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, true. You don't need to go there if you have something to playtest. You can go there if you want to playtest people's stuff. So go and offer your services to the Discord.
And yeah, reading people's advice about other things can also be valuable. Like, I'm on the subreddit for tabletop game design, even though I don't design tabletop actual board games and things. But I love reading people's constructive criticism. It's just a really cool thing to find out what other people think about mechanics and design and stuff like that. It feels like it's going to make my future work better.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and running that room for us.
Absolute pleasure.
For everyone at home, thank you for listening. If you want to find more of what we do, you can find everything that we do at consumethismedia.com. That has Escape This Podcast. It has our second show, Solve This Murder. And recently we've been doing a new mystery on Solve This Murder, which, what is this? It might be done already.
That depends on your editing skills.
There's a good chance that mystery has just concluded as of last week. So you can go, or 2 weeks ago, you can go back and enjoy that fun mystery that we've done.
So this means the non-Patreon people can now get the full thing.
They can now have the full thing.
But people who are part of our Patreon got it weeks ago.
They got the whole thing day one. lucky patrons. If you wanted to help support the network and the shows that we make, you can support us on Patreon. Anybody at any level of donation has a chance to appear as an NPC in one of Danny's rooms.
And I know that doesn't happen so much in the guest seasons, but with all of my special rooms, live show rooms, Christmas rooms, I'm going to pack them in there.
We also have bonus episodes for our $5 donors, including in this guest season, because we don't do our own playtests this season, which would be our usual $5 episodes for Escape This Podcast fans. Instead, Danny and I are doing our own sort of revisiting of all of our old rooms from the first season or two to have a look at those and dissect them in a sort of Podcast This Escape style.
And
the
see
rooms
if we
that happened
can...
before Podcast This Escape was a thing.
And seeing if we can get them into our book publishable state.
Yes, we want to try and make our $1,000 goal on Patreon a while ago was to try and do like a little collected book version of the early rooms,
so cool.
Make them all nice, get some art done. We are in the very, very slow process of getting that done.
Yeah, I've started working on a book.
Surprisingly enough.
It's a pain in the butt. I'm doing a tabletop role-playing, trying to make a book for myself. Just so much redoing and retesting and takes forever.
Lovely. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much again for running the room. Thank you, Danny, for playing with me and communicating all of those nines. Bye, everybody. Bye.